Alright, everyone should have a sheet in front of them. One of these timeline sheets. The mythology sheet should be passed to the front. Passed to the front. In your notes that you should have out now, your Rome notes, you should be writing one sentence on why you think republic governments work and one sentence on why you think they don't work. So come up with a positive for Republican governments and one negative for Republican governments. Remember, we're talking about Republican in terms of representatives being voted in and then representing the people. So, in your notes, write one sentence on why you think they work and one sentence why they don't. As you're passing up your note, or as you're passing up your mythology sheets and taking out your notes. And pass them up to the front of your rows, please. Pass them up. One sentence on why Republican governments work, and one sentence on why they don't work. Yes. No, you can do it in your notes. Yeah, write that in your notes. Write those two sentences in your notes, please. You gonna get the notes up? Yep. Good. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to work on that while you guys are getting your notes out. Alright. Last call for gallery sheets. Or not gallery sheets, for these mythology worksheets. Got everyone's here, right? Okay. Thanks, sir. All right. Anyone want to share a reason why Republican governments are good? Raise your hand. Give me a reason. Yes.
So they don't have like too much power.
So they don't have too much power. Wonderful. That's a good idea. So it helps limit the power of government because they have to be responding to the will of the people. What else? What are some other reasons for why it's a good government system? Who said that? Say a little bit louder. Whoever said that? You have no idea? All right. How about it gives the people a voice, right? It gives the people a voice through their representatives. So the people have more control over the government. Again, kind of going along with what you said about it becoming too powerful. What are some downsides of a Republican government? Yes?
People get greedy.
People get greedy, that's one aspect. We see that sometimes in our, when we go into U.S. history, we see a lot of corruption throughout history in Republican governments. What's another idea? Here's a big one. If you have people representing what the other people want to say, what's one flaw that could happen from that? They're corrupt, right? That's one thing, but more specifically, if the voters say, I want this, and the representative says, I want this, and that's not what the voter says, is he representing the people? No. So that would be one way in which representative governments don't get their point across. What we're talking about today is that we're talking about the Roman Republic, all right? The Roman Republic was a system of government based very similar to our own, but it had some problems. Corruption was one of them. The representatives not representing the will of the people, all right? These were all things inherent to the Republic. As such, the Republic very quickly devolves into a dictatorship. When someone comes in, it becomes too powerful in the Roman Senate. And that's who we're going to talk about today. Does anyone know who that individual's name is? One of the most important figures from Roman history. Julius Caesar, right. Pretty easy guess right there. All right, so talked a little bit about the Roman Republic. Let's get into some notes. So as soon as we're done with notes today, we will also be going into a worksheet that's going to discuss the timeline of the Roman dictators in the first dynasty. Can anyone tell me what a dynasty is? Anyone know what the term dynasty means? Yes?
It's like the time
A ruler rules for a certain period of time, right? More specifically, what else?
It's a family of rulers.
Family of rulers, right? So you have one family of rulers ruling over a time period. Now, in a traditional dynasty, it goes father, son, grandson, and then so on and so forth. But sometimes dynasties have the role call on uncles, brothers, all right? These are all aspects of dynastic rule when there's no heirs, all right? So, we're going to be talking about that when we get into Caesar and the first dynasty. So first we need to talk about the effects of Roman expansion. So Italy was ruined after the Punic Wars, financially and as a republic kind of ruined. Remember, their pride was kind of crushed after the Second Punic War because of Hannibal's expertise. They basically got beaten out by a barbarian, especially at the Battle of Cannae, where they lost 86,000 Romans to these barbarian soldiers. As such, it was a major defeat, but they also spent a lot of money on these wars, creating warships and everything. So they're financially ruined too in this result. All right. The number of slaves found in Rome also rose to a dangerous level. So there's lots of slaves as the result of the destruction of Carthage. They brought in, yes.
How many people were in Rome?
During this time period, we're looking at about around 10 million. So around very small cities, but still a lot. All right. We're seeing a lot of slaves enter the Roman area. Remember, when Carthage gets destroyed in the Third Punic War, they basically take all the Carthaginians in as slaves for the ones that they don't kill, become slaves. Somewhere around 1 million slaves. So as such, when the slaves are getting mistreated and they feel like they're not being treated well by the society they're in, they revolt. And thus we get a revolt. 90,000 plus slaves revolt under Spartacus. And if you have seen the 1960 Stanley Kubrick film with Spartacus, you'll know that that was the case. There's also a recent HBO series, I believe, but it's not as good as Stanley Kubrick film, I promise. Alright, so Spartacus comes in. Spartacus decides that the slaves are being treated unfairly. Yes, thank you. Good. Oh well. Yeah. So the slaves are being treated unfairly in this system. As such, they revolt and they cause massive damage. They basically split Rome into two. We call these the Servile Wars. Alright? So, the servant class is coming in and they're revolting. And they're causing major problems for Rome. So, Rome quickly puts down the revolt, but it's at a major cost. Let's go over reformers. Alright? In addition to this, some other problems are that small farmers are forced out of business due to tribute being paid by conquered people. Alright? Remember, the people that Romans conquer are able to pay tribute through grain and other aspects. Alright? As such, they are being forced out of business by these conquered people. Populations in cities also grow quickly, and the politicians, as a result, become increasingly corrupt. Right? When you have a system where you can basically raise taxes at whatever whim you wish, you're going to have corrupt officials. Corrupt officials are also listening to the interests of business, and they're using that to fuel whatever their policies are. So they're no longer responding to the people, but to financial interests. We call that corruption. All right? When you're not responding to the will of the people and you're responding to direct influence of business, that's called corruption. So, we try to see some changes from the lower classes. All right? They try to make some changes, but they're immediately put down. The government has become too powerful at this point for them to really make any headway into really fueling their future. In addition to this, military men take over. Remember, we talked about the consuls, which were a part of the Roman government. Not only were they the essential judiciary branch, but they were also the military branch. So as such, the military men begin to take control of the Senate. Marius opens up the army to everyone, and he starts to pay his soldiers. And soldiers become more loyal to the generals than they are to the country. So, when you're being paid by specific Roman consuls and not by the country, you're becoming loyal to people, not to the people. You're becoming loyal to generals, not the populace. All right, so we're going to see this become a concurrent problem in Roman society, especially when we get to the gentleman coming in on the next portion, Julius Caesar. So we'll talk a little bit about Caesar now. You guys catch up a little bit. So, all this eventually culminates or leads to the rise of Julius Caesar. This is considered to be the first Roman dictator since the time of the monarchs. So remember, they kicked out the monarchy in 504 BC. Now, several hundred years later, we're here at Julius Caesar. So, Julius Caesar starts as one of these military men that's currently in control of the Senate. He has his own privately funded military, so people are very loyal to him. In 60 BC, Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey formed a ruling called the Triumvirate. So it was a ruling of three people that basically were in charge of the Senate, and they made the Senate basically subservient to their whims. All right, whatever they wanted, the Senate would do for them. In addition to this, Caesar expanded Rome into Europe. He's fighting against the Gauls, the Visigoths, all the European tribes in that area. He later goes on to try and attack the Britons at some point, but that doesn't go very well for him. He also expands further into Africa. We see him going into Egypt, looking at Egypt as he looks for the other members that betrayed him later. We also see him expanding into Asia Minor a little bit. All right? Remember, Rome had already had a little bit of conquest in Africa and Asia, but now we're going to see them expand further into that area. So, he later defeated these other two men, Pompey and Crassus, to become the dictator of Rome. There's actually a huge, fascinating story about how he defeated those two dictators, but that's a more complicated history than you need for this review at this moment. But if you're interested in that, I highly recommend you look up biographies of Julius Caesar, and you'll learn how he defeated these other two men. Right? One of them, he actually didn't want to have killed, but the Egyptians killed Crassus for him. They delivered him his head. They got very angry about that. All right, so after he defeats these people and becomes dictator, he starts to grant citizenship to conquered peoples. These include Greeks, Spaniards, and the Gauls that are getting conquered. All right? So, not only is he conquering these people, but he's integrating them into the empire. So the Roman Empire is becoming an empire not of just Romans and Italians, but all other people are now citizens underneath this conquered system. This is going to play to his favor, because over time, the military is going to become more based on Greeks, Spaniards, and Gauls than it is Italians. That's going to come much later after Julius Caesar's death, which happens on the Ides of March, which is March 15th, in 44 BC. He is betrayed by the other members of the Senate. Right? The Senate basically stabs him to death. Yep, and of course, anyone know his last famous words from the Shakespearean play? Yes.
Et tu, Brute.
Et tu, Brute, then falls Caesar. Very good. So, with Caesar dead, there's a power vacuum. Essentially, the Roman Senate has become so ineffectual that it cannot run on its own. So someone else needs to take power. And that will bring us to Caesar Augustus, or who would later be called Caesar Augustus. But first he's called Octavian. All right? Octavian, Julius Caesar starts the dictatorship, and Octavian is related to him. But it's really Caesar Augustus who begins the Julio-Crassus timeline. Now, when you guys do your timelines, I want you to start with Caesar and then go into Augustus. But Augustus is really the one that starts this idea of this timeline of rulers. Augustus also canonizes Julius Caesar as a king, and not just a king, but a god among these people. So he calls them a god. So now from this point forward, Roman emperors are going to be viewed as an extension of God. So the big takeaway that we learn from Julius Caesar is that the republic becomes weak and ineffectual with expansion. Right? As such, when you have a weak and ineffectual republic that's no longer serving the people, the government serves other interests. When the government starts serving other interests, those interests take place over the people. When those interests take place over the people, someone powerful comes in to make a representative of those interests. And when you get to that point, that's the end of your republic. Your republic dies and a dictatorship forms. All right? So that's what we see during this time period. Julius Caesar becomes a dictator of Rome as a result of the failures of the Republic. Let's see, anything else? All right, so we're finished with this assignment. I want you guys to take out your A-B sheet. We're going to do a quick review. All right, so if you have the A-B sheets out, if you don't have them out, and you threw yours away last time, just same as usual. One giant A on one side, one giant B on the other side, and then we'll get into the timeline. So as soon as you're finished writing notes, take out your A-B sheet and stand up.
Oh, I get
Go. Pictures of the notes? Very good, yes. If you need to take a picture of the notes, please do as well.
Can I just make another one? Is that allowed?
Yes, you can make another one, yes. Yes, if you cannot find your old A-B sheet, make a new one, and then keep that one in your notes. A on one side and B on the other. Show this someone behind you. Alright, as soon as you're finished with your notes, put them away. Put up your stand up with your A-B sheet. So that way you know who's done with the notes. Just make a new one. You write an A on one side of the sheet and a B on the other side of the sheet. A big one, as big as you can. Yep. Yep. Stand up with it. Yeah, you have to stand up.
That's pretty neat. Yeah. So there's. Wait, what's that?
Go, just go ahead and. All right. As soon as everyone gets ready, we'll get started.
I don't know. He's making another one. Why was it?
Oh, yeah. She, actually.
All right. If you can't find your A-B sheet, just make a new one. All right. Everyone, you have your A-B sheets. Let me see them. Let me see them. All right. Very good. So, question number one. Question number one. Who was the leader of the slave revolt in ancient Rome? Was it A, Marius, or B, Spartacus? You see those responses. That would be B, Spartacus. So everyone with A, please sit down. All right, next question. Who were the name? Give me the name of one of the following. Sorry. Who of the following was the name of one of the councils or the members of the triumvirate along with Caesar? Was it A, Pompey, or B, Marius? Was it A, Pompey? All right, very good. Next question. Who was the other member of the triumvirate in addition to Caesar? Was it A, Cassius, or B, Crassus? B, Crassus. All right. So we got a couple people left. I'll knock out two more people before we continue forward. All right. Next question. On what date was Julius Caesar killed? Was it the 15th of March or the 14th of March? A, 15th of March, B, 14th of March. Was A, the 15th of March. Very good. All right. Everyone up to the front. Up to the front. Very good.
I lied.
Done?
14.
All right. So let's do a little bit of review from the past couple weeks. Who was the name of the barbarian from Carthage that fought against Rome in the Second Punic Wars? Was it A, Hasdrubal, or B, Hannibal? That would be B, Hannibal. Who was known as the Scourge of Asia Minor? Was it A, Hasdrubal, or B, Mithridates? That would be B, Mithridates.
Oh, I was just about to make a sign for you, Izzy. I'm sorry.
All right, let's keep going forward. Who was the name of the people that were in Rome before the Romans? Was it A, the Etruscans, or B, the Aegeans? A, the Etruscans. You two got sit down. All right, down to the final three. Very good. All right. In what year was the last Etruscan king thrown out? Was this A, 550 BC, or B, 504 BC? B, 504 BC. Okay.
Who's that?
Let's see here. Who was the name of Romulus's brother? Was it A, Aeneas, or B, Remus? B, Remus. Very good. Romulus was said to be descended from which ancient civilization? Was it A, the Minoan civilization, or B, the Trojan civilization? B, the Trojan civilization. Very good. All right. Let's see here. Let's go a little bit further then. Who, see, I'll ask a question that's technically part of this, but not quite. Who was the name of the famous Egyptian queen that was known to have relations with Julius Caesar? Was it A, Hesesput, or B, Cleopatra? B, Cleopatra. Sorry, man.
I love how you said relations. That's
I did not have relations with that Egyptian queen. No. All right, so whoever that was that you, that one? So you got a point of extra credit. Very good. All right, so continuing. We are now going to go to cell phone green for this next activity. So what you have in front of you, or what you should have gotten from behind you, is called a Julian-Claudian timeline. So what I want you guys to use this timeline for is to basically trace the lineage of the dynasty of the Julio-Claudian timeline. All right? Here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the name of the emperor. I'm looking for 5 major events. I'm looking for their cause of death and their relation to the person that preceded them. Yes?
Do you want the mythology thing?
Yes. You should turn that in the beginning, but that's fine.
My bad.
Thank you. So, like I said, we are looking for 5 important events per each emperor. I'm looking for major events. So tell me what 5 major events that emperor did, or what they were a part of. In addition to that, I'm also looking for the relationship to the person that preceded them. So what do I mean by that? Who came after Julius Caesar? I mentioned it earlier in class today. Does anyone remember? Who came after Julius Caesar? Yes.
Augustus Caesar?
Augustus, yes, Caesar Augustus. You will have to tell me what Caesar Augustus' relation to Caesar was. Right? Was he his brother-in-law? Was he his son? Yes.
Where are we getting this information?
You're on cell phone green, so you can look it up. Alright? You guys are going to be on cell phone green, so you're going to look up this information. You can also look in your textbook to see if any of that information is in there as well, if you didn't bring your phone today. So, like I said, I'm looking for major emperors of this timeline. There's about 6. So starting with Julius Caesar, ending with, well, you'll have to figure it out. I won't tell you that. But again, I'm looking for them in chronological order, the dates that they ruled, 5 major events, their cause of death, and their relationship to the emperor before them. All right? So, get on that, find who the members of this dynasty were. If you look up the dynasty, you'll be able to find it easily. But remember, start with Julius Caesar. So, who should be the first name on there? Julius Caesar. So go ahead and write that down before you get confused. Because most timelines will start with Augustus. And technically that's not correct. They should be starting with Julius Caesar. Alright, so you're going to start with Caesar, move down to Augustus, and then go forward. Remember, you guys are on cell phone green. And this is not a partner assignment or a group assignment, so you're going to be working on yourself. If you don't finish in class today, we will finish them in class on Monday, in which they will be due. Okay? Very good. Get to it. And if you have any questions, you can ask me as always. So I'll be walking around the room, checking on your progress. Ask me as always. Yeah, easily. Good. You're going to start with Julius Caesar and then look at the events. Right? And then from there, you can go on to Augustus and go forward. The reason why I had to write Julius Caesar down first, that a lot of these timelines start with Augustus as the first ruler of this dynasty. That's not technically correct. Julius Caesar was, hence why it's called the Julio-Claudian line. Right? They come from the family Julio, which was started by Julius Caesar, as far as rulers are concerned. Assignment is to help you understand the purpose of dynasties. What are dynasties in terms of political rule? And then also helping you understand the major events of the fall of the Roman Republic. We're going to talk more about some of these leaders on Monday, so you'll have a better scope of information. Yes? Just do it in the class Monday. So you have time in class to finish this on Monday. You can also work on it over the weekend if that's what you would like, but it is not required. Born Octavius before being adopted later by his great uncle Julius Caesar, ruling as a Octavius Caesar, he becomes the leader after Caesar's assassination in 44 BC. So he was adopted by Caesar before Caesar was assassinated, but after Caesar gets assassinated, then Augustus later becomes ruler. It takes some time, but he does become ruler. And he starts off as Octavian, but then he calls himself Caesar Augustus in order to get that name recognition. But you will refer to him as Augustus in this timeline. Because at that point, he's known as the Emperor Augustus. Yes?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, does it have like multiple events? So I just pick out the most important ones, like that one, and that one.
Yep.
And then I just write the date.
Yep. You got the most important events that you can find for Caesar. Like I said, there's multiple, but for each dictator, you're going to pick the most important event for each emperor. All right?
Wait, you don't write all 5 then?
No, you don't. I want you to write all 5. Pick the most important out of the 5. You'll be able to find like 10 or 12, but I want you to pick 5 that are the most important. That would be up to your discretion on what you think about history. Yes. Yeah, so. Yes, they do have to be in order. So, yes, your list of rulers have to be in order, and so I would prefer if your events were also in order. All right, so start from the most recent event. Sorry, not from the most recent event. Start with their first event and go on to their last event for the 5 major events. You're also more than welcome to use some of the notes that we did today on Caesar for some of your Caesar events. But you may need just more than those events there. Yeah, sorry. For the first part for Julius Caesar, where it says relation to previous ruler, don't put anything on there. Because there was no previous ruler before him. As far as a leader was concerned, a centralized emperor. So yeah, for that information, you do not have to fill that out. But for the rest of them, you will have to write the relation for previous rulers. So just write N/A next to it. Inaccessible. Not applicable. No, please, thank you. I got you. Yep. What's going on? Correct you? Correct me? That's it for this dynasty. For this dynasty, that's all there is. But there is future dynasties that happen after that one. Okay, the Flavian dynasty, the Hadrian dynasty, all that good stuff. On Monday, we're going to talk about some of these rulers and their accomplishments in terms of the empire and how that's concerned, the Roman Empire.
So Caesar, right? Did Caesar is the first ruler?
Keep going. Remember, you're more than welcome to use the book too if your phone's charging. Yes, if for some reason your phone is not able to give you the information you're looking for, you can also use the textbooks for world history. That'll also give you a better idea of what events are important and which ones aren't. Alright? So if you want to use the book for some reason, that would be the best idea to go with. As far as looking for which events are important and which ones aren't. Give you a basic overview. Yes?
Is this the second?
Yep.
Wait, now
Bless you. Alright, if you need any help, just ask. Yes. Following. Yeah. You're looking for Augustus first. Remember, I said Augustus will typically be listed as the first ruler, but he actually technically comes after Caesar, as far as the Julian line is concerned. Score? Very good. Did you call bank though?
It's in.
So if that person you wrote down will be a third ruler. Yep, that's gonna be NA. Is that it? Correct. Yeah. They said Augustus sometimes is listed as the first. Augustus, then Tiberius, then Fully. Yes. Oh, yeah, Augustus, yes. Who follows Julius Caesar after his death? Who becomes the next ruler? Augustus, right? So, for your second person, should be Augustus. Even though if you look up the second ruler, it's going to tell you that Tiberius was the second ruler. Not the case. We're starting with Julius first. So Julius Caesar first. Obviously, the order's going to change a little bit. And if for some reason you do finish early with the timeline part, there are 4 questions that follow afterwards. I expect those questions to be finished as well. I made them a little bit easier than our typical questions, so we shouldn't have too much problem with it. Yeah, those were questions. Yeah. you'll find it easier once you finish the timeline and really finish the questions. So, good. Finished? Anyone have any questions before we go on this assignment? When's it due?
Monday, end of class.
End of class Monday, right?
Compare the